That Matan Kahana, Minister Kahana, who was to speak to us this afternoon, has corona. What am I hearing? I FaceTimed my daughter accidentally. Good. I'm glad it was you and not Vladimir Putin. Matan Kahana will not be with us this afternoon because he has corona. I'm sure we all wish him the best. We are working right now for a substitute of a minister who had canceled on us previously. We should know about that shortly. If that does not happen, we'll just push up the last session with Yossi Klein Halevi and Mahal Kotler-Wunsch. We will keep you advised. In addition, as one can imagine, I'm sure everybody saw the news this morning about Russia and Ukraine. If not, do a quick Google search. There obviously are some changes at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that we are working through as far as who's involved in what. As we will hear, I'm sure, this morning, the ministry has been engaged since, for well over a week, but definitively since early this morning. On the ground, there are 25 diplomats and Jewish agency Shloshim and the like who are there. Diplomats are fanning out to the various borders of Ukraine in order to expedite entry and exit if necessary. And so the minister and the deputy directors general and the director general himself are all engaged in the Situation Room at the moment. We're working on refocusing the first session to focus on Ukraine, and I'm fairly certain that will work. And we'll just sort of play it by ear for the rest of the day at the ministry. Are there any questions about anything? Okay. So with that, let me pass the baton to Rabbi Ellen. Thank you very much.
Boker Tov, I'm Rabbi Ellen Wollens-Fields. I'm the Executive Director of Women's League for Conservative Judaism. I'm a conservative rabbi, and I guess they knew that I was used to speaking early in the morning to an empty room. So welcome to Psukei de Zimra, when you don't have too many people, but at least we have a minyan, so it's good. So I just want to start by telling you Women's League for Conservative Judaism has been engaging, enriching, and empowering Jewish women since 1918. And I can tell you that I now have a chazaka on Conference of Presidents missions, because this is my third. And after my first, I got the best drash of my life, because you would go to, later today will be asked, do you have a weapon on you? And I always thought, yeah, I have a weapon. Doesn't look like I have a weapon. Koli, my voice is my weapon. So I haven't had the chutzpah to actually say that to anybody at the gate, but let's all remember that all of our voices used correctly are a weapon. And our best way of using that weapon is using the two things that God has given us, our two ears, at the same time as using our mouth. And before I begin to introduce our speakers for this session today about, the exact title is the Advancement of Women in Israeli Society, let's just talk about the advancement of women in the Conference of Presidents and our amazing chair, Diane Loeb. An inspiration and a role model, and thank you. I remember my first conference in 2019. There weren't as many of us here, meaning women, and it's really great to see so many of us here dialoguing and listening. So thank you. Our speakers this morning for our panel on the advancement of women in Israeli society, Ms. Rivka Ravitz, right? These haven't changed, I hope. Okay, good. She served as the Chief of Staff to the 10th President of the State of Israel, Mr. Ruvi Rivlin. She began working with him as the parliamentary assistant in 1999. She headed his office, ran many of his campaigns, including successful campaigns for his election as Speaker of the Knesset in 2000 and 2009, and his election to as President of the State of Israel in 2014. If you ever want something to get done, you give it to a busy woman. She does it efficiently and probably in shorter time because she is definitely busy as a mother of 12 children, God bless, a member of the ultra-Orthodox community in Israel. That's you, welcome. And she is as of 2017, working on a doctorate in public policy at the University of Haifa. Dr. Dalia Fadia, provost of Al-Qasemi Academy, is an Arab College of Education. She acted as the president of the college during 2006. She's an expert on organizational development and a researcher of American literature, women's literature, and ethnic studies. She's established private schools for teaching English called Q Schools, and for English language and HR development that proposes a unique approach to learning and teaching English suited to Arab students and stemming from the need of these students to develop personally and professionally. The legal advisor today, Ayelet Razin Bet-Or, is currently the legal advisor for the Association of Rape Crisis Centers of Israel. In the capacity, she regularly participates in various Knesset committees and has initiated dozens of bills in the area of sex offenders and victims' rights and promoted legislation in the relevant circles of influence. She has spent 15 years at the intersection of law and society and has experienced the power of multi-sector collaborations to create, change, and advance a public agenda. Prior to her current position, Ayelet was attorney in the State Attorney's Office, Department of Police Investigations for 10 years. An active community member of Kibbutz Ma'aleh Hamisha, she also initiated and continues to manage local community projects. Our women here show we need collaboration, we need listening, and we need busy women to run us. Our moderator today, who I think I may be friends with on Facebook possibly, Allison Kaplan-Somer, has been a journalist at Haaretz since 2012, is co-host of the Promise podcast. She's the former Washington, D.C. correspondent, feature writer, and critic for the Jerusalem Post, so we've probably all heard and read from her. She's written on a freelance basis for U.S. publications, including The New Republic, Politico, The Forward, JTA. Allison was the fall 2017 Arnold Distinguished Visiting Chair in Jewish Studies, and in 2016, B'nai B'rith World Center Award for Journalism for Excellence in Diaspora Reportage was rewarded to her. The 2017 Simon Rockower Award for Excellence in Covering Zionism, Aliyah, in Israel. I don't know about all of you, but I'm already inspired just by their bios and how much they have done for us, and I look forward to hearing you this morning. Todah.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our panel on the advancement of women in Israeli society. It's really an honor to be here with the Conference of Presidents. I am completely dating myself, but as a young reporter in 1990, one of my very first big journalistic assignments was to travel from New York with the Conference of Presidents and cover this mission. On the subject of women, there's a lot more women here now than there was then. I remember I was in my 20s, and I remember feeling, sticking out among all of those, older men. One of the very few females, as well as my age. And the other big difference was that Malcolm had a full head of brown hair back then. He's not even here, so I can't even, whatever. Don't tell him I was talking about him behind his back. As you can see from my description of myself, I've been on this beat for a very long time, covering Israel and the Jewish world with a special interest in the subject of women. Often I feel like gender parity in Israel is something of an optical illusion. We have not one but two films this year in production about the life of Golda Meir, and I often feel like Golda Meir and the fact that women are also drafted into the Israeli army offer sort of a false sense of, from the beginning, Israeli women have arrived, also the egalitarian ethos of the kibbutz. When in fact there are many, many challenges in the face of Israeli women. According to by the numbers, according to the 2020 Gender Index conducted by the Center for the Advancement of Women in the Public Sphere at the Van Leer Institute, women in Israel earn 67% of what men earn, and those are pre-COVID numbers. We've never gotten much above a quarter of the Knesset, and our numbers in terms of real power in the cabinet are much lower. So, talking about the pandemic, women have borne much of the brunt of that pandemic. A majority of our healthcare workers are female. Overwhelming number of educators are female. Israel was one of the Western countries that kept kids home from school the longest. And in most cases, it was women who had to sacrifice income and career advancement to care for them. Anyway, we are very lucky today to have 3 women here at the forefront of working in various ways to improve the situation. It's breaking news, right, Ayelet, that you have the big job, right? Less than 72 hours ago, she was officially appointed to direct the Authority for the Advancement of the Status of Women for the Ministry of Social Equality. So since you all 3 are personally women who have advanced far and impressively in your own careers and lives, I'd like to begin the panel with your own stories. Can I ask you all 3 the same question? What was your path to where you are professionally and personally? What was your biggest barrier to advancement? And what were the ways in which you overcame it? Addressing you, I'm going to use first names, not because you are women, because that's the way it goes in Israel. My kids don't call anybody Mrs. or Mr. anything. They use first names. So I will go on a first name basis. Ayelet, would you like to start? Yeah.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited. It might affect my English. I might make up words, so bear with me. So I started my professional route as a prosecutor in the state attorney's office. And I was there for about 9 years. And for along these years, I found myself drawn to dealing with domestic violence and sexual assault cases. And again and again, I was I was frustrated with how the system deals with these kinds of cases, of how only, the tip of the iceberg gets to the law enforcement system. The surveys made in Israel by the Ministry of Social
Equality.
Security. No, Social Security. Not Social Security. Bitrun Pnim.
Internal security.
Internal security. Yeah. So only 6% of the population report sexual assault. Just report. 85% of the cases are closed. So just the tip of the iceberg got to us. And only the very severe cases that there's very strong evidence that you can take to court. And it is very frustrating. It was very frustrating for me. Each case is a whole world, and I was very proud and honored to be a prosecutor in the Israeli law enforcement system. But I understood that in order to make a change, I need to, broaden the scope of what I'm dealing with. And after 9 years, I moved to the NGO, to the Association of the Rape Crisis Centers of Israel. There are 9 rape crisis centers. I was in the association, which means that where I was is the Knesset, is the government. And I was able to make changes with, many partners, the partners you talked about before in the Knesset, the women parliament members, and a lot of men that also understand the scope of this problem. And we were able, in these 5 years that I was in this position, just until recently, to make many law amendments and to change government priorities. So we're just at the beginning of this, but really I am very full of hope about these things that are starting to move more to professionalize the law enforcement. The people who give service, either if it's policemen or judges or prosecutors, to have dedicated units. That's something we're pushing for. And like Allison said, just less than 72 hours ago, I was appointed, thank you, to be the head of the authority for the advancement of women's status, which I hope and believe that I will be able to make a bigger impact in more spheres that are, broaden it's not only violence, everything. I believe that everything starts in education. Rivka, I hear that she has 12 children. I'm sure she'll be able to talk about that, and being such a successful career woman. Everything starts at home, so we have to talk about education, and we have to talk about women advancement in the workforce and in the government. Just lately, there was a survey in the government offices that in the government there is a very, very big gap in salary and in women representation. And the state is supposed to be, the leader, the carry this flag of equality. So that's where I'm going to start. And I have a lot of work cut out for me, but I'm ready.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We're honored to be one of your first public appearances since your appointment. Are we the first appearance publicly?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I'll call you Dalia, but you earned the title. I should call you Dr. Fadila. So I'll do so. Dalia, would you like to tell us a little bit about what you overcame to get where you are?
Are you sure it's a little bit? So first of all, I have to correct the way I was introduced. I'm the founder of the Q Schools already. Beyond being an English school, it's an alternative system of education for Arabs in Israel. And it also works with Jewish schools in mentoring and creating advanced pedagogical models. And second, I'm the joint CEO of Atidna, an Arab-Jewish NGO advancing the integration of young Arabs in Israeli society. So the way I got to here is a bit long, but I would like to start with one transformative moment in my life, in my career. And basically more in my personal life than it is in my career. When I was asked to attend the GA in Baltimore, more than, I guess it's a decade ago, and I was overwhelmed, and I have to say that again, overwhelmed by the power, and excuse me, gentlemen, of women, Jewish American women attending that, and I was tremendously inspired by the power of the leading women in the Jewish community. And I went back home saying to myself one thing: I have to be like them. Damn, I have to be like them. So this brings me back to this moment, and the fact that I have met so many people directly and indirectly who made me think the way I am thinking right now. I grew up in Tira, a village then and a town now, called a city, not really a city, a village disguised in a city form. It's in the Triangle area, 100% Muslim. Back in the 90s, my father, who was the head of the education system in Tira, decided that his girls, myself and my sister, should be the first academic women in the village. And you can imagine back then how my aunts, Arab aunts, came protesting that once he sends his girls to the university outside the village, and it's not a teacher training college, he will pickle us, pickle? That means we will not get any chance of getting a good match in an Arab-Muslim context. But I'm fortunate for them and very fortunate for our father, and especially our mother. We already have our families with an average of 3.5 kids. That's the husband side. Since then at Bar-Ilan University, it was a journey, actually. I decided to continue studying at Bar-Ilan University for my first degree, second degree, and third degree for a simple reason. I was in a search, in a quest for trying to figure out who am I, and what is my mission, what is my vision, how could I become someone? I somehow grew up in a complex of vacuum plus victimhood complex, where we Muslim Arab women grow up looking at the men and saying, the men are our roof, and then looking up at the state and say, the state is our roof, and looking up at the world and say, the world is too big for us, we can't handle it. And at Bar-Ilan University, I was feeling all the time during my first degree that I am the Arab in the room. Especially it was the 90s and the Gulf War, and I failed my first, surprisingly, ironically, Women in Literature seminar. Imagine that. And then I was going through the whole semester thinking, like, it's because I'm an Arab, definitely because I couldn't fail the Women in Literature seminar. It's because the lecturer is a woman and she's religious and she's this and that and that and that, until she called me a month after my F and she said, Dalia, don't you intend to revise your paper? And I said, yeah, do I have a chance to do that? And she said, yes. And that opened for me my second degree, where I met Professor Ellen Spolsky, and she said, you have to research yourself. And I said, I'm not a field of study, professor. And she said, yes, you are. You're an Arab, you're a Muslim, you are dark, you're not white. Pay attention to that. In my community, I am white, and even I'm blonde. It's all relative. And she said, go search for the way women write themselves in America. And I started studying Asian American, Jewish American, Native American, all kind of hyphenated women trying to rewrite themselves. And I found the light. And then at my third degree, I already had 2 kids, and the third coming. And then I called Professor Ellen Spolsky, and I said, I can't be only a mom and an English teacher at the local high school. I have to do something with myself. And she said, come. And I went there, I studied my PhD, and I met Professor Michael Kramer, who introduced me, and it was about September 11 and the whole issues around September 11, and he said, Arab American literature is underdeserved, understudied. You should go there. And I fell in love with the literature of Arab women trying to rewrite themselves as first generation, second generation into the context of America. And at that time, I also left the high school. I actually was kicked out of the high school because I tried to change the word from the English classroom in my village. And I found myself joining a group trying to help a Sufi movement establish the first academy in Baka al-Gharbiya called the El-Qasimi, which I left more than 8 years ago. I'm no longer the provost of El-Qasimi as I was introduced. And for 15 years, I started to be from the English teacher into the head of the college, starting with my meeting room. The first meeting I invited my staff to attend was empty, because the men protested in a way that they were absent from my meeting back then, because they said, no way a woman can lead us, not in academia, and this is not a place for women. And it was back then when I started learning the power of being strategic. The power of being viciously strategic, and how in an academic college that is powered by men and religion, and it's all under the mosque, I have to be the Sheikha Doctora. I have to be the one who leads the first international conference on Islam and other religions. I have to be the one leading a delegation of sheikhs into the United States, learning from Yeshiva University and Columbia University and George Washington University. I have to be there, showing them that it is me who is bringing them to the next level. That's very self-centered, I know, but I had to do it in order to pave the way for all the young women in the college who started to see light and see the ceiling opening up into a sun of advancement. When I left the college, I was already the head of the college, the president of the college, and I opened it to engineering and technology, and I was determined that 50% of the women studying in engineering technology should be women, Arab women. I had to speak to the fathers. I have to convince the mother. I have to go to the husbands in order to bring women, Arab young Muslim women, into engineering and technology. After 20 years at El-Qasimi, I felt some vacuum. I felt some vacuum, and I said, we are trying to redeem, we're trying to fix our community from the upper end of after high school, but whatever we are doing, we're only dealing with 30% of our students and graduates of high school who are hardly graduating high school. I need to go back. I need to go back to the roots. And I started the Q schools from nothing, from 30 kids an English school, something I know how to do. Trying, disguised by English, is to lead cognitive change, is to introduce kids into higher order thinking skills, is to introduce kids into some capacity building, into some agency. And from there, Q schools developed into bilingual English schools, bilingual preschools, daycares, English, Arabic, trilingual daycares, opening up a school and mentoring other schools where we are touching almost 5,000 young people and kids and families each year, working in 3 circles, as Arabic as the language of identity, Hebrew, the language of citizen and integration, and English, the language of globalization. 5 years after I left Al-Qasimi, already working heavily into creating this system of education, I felt very lonely. And I had another realization, that whatever I am doing from within my community is not enough. At 2018, when I left Al-Qasimi, I said, whatever I have done for 20 years have not been enough, because working after high school is not enough. It's not grassroots. And when I 5 years established the Q schools, and I already have my daycares in English and Arabic, imagine, Arab kids age 0 exposed to English, Arab kids age 5 exposed to English, Arabic, and Hebrew, with an ideology of being you, being part of the country, and being part of the world, which is a revolution. People attacked me. They said, I'm westernizing, I am Zionizing, whatever you want. I'm against the stream. I am the wrong one. Luckily, I stayed married for 25 years, 3 kids. My older son is Hamid, which is something you have to put plus above everything in your career as an Arab Muslim woman, and that all worked for my advantage. And then I met a group of nationally right-wing Jews who said, we're meeting, we want to know who you are. And we gathered together, a group of Arabs and Jews, and we started talking. And the people who usually, from the Jewish side, you would think they are your opposition, they are your anti-Arab group, they said, it's the Jabotinsky and Herzl philosophy. We are committed to a healthy state of Israel. We need to learn more outside the dichotomy of who's the enemy of who. And we need to understand what is going on in the Arab community and how the Arab community can be part of Israel. And then after 2 years of fighting, negotiating, understanding, studying statistics, we decided to establish Atidna, a joint Arab and Jewish organization. And Atidna now is providing a qualification for young Arabs to be introduced into high tech. Half of them are women, which is my personal pride. A youth movement of 3,000 kids, filling a vacuum for young Arabs and kids. And symbolically speaking, practically speaking, we're going to lead the first March of the Living to Poland this April, an Arab 100. Young people going into Poland. I have studied the Shoah when I was at Bar Ilan. I have studied the Shoah not to understand you guys. I studied the Shoah to understand me. I needed that. I studied the Shoah and I studied Jewish American, African American, Native American, because I needed to know who am I and what is my story. And because it took me so many years to understand my story, I am able now to write a narrative. And the narrative is simple, and this is what guides me at the Q schools when I work with age 0 to 18, at Atidna when we work from 18 and above, and we do what we do. And you can imagine how many times I was attacked as the enemy. But doesn't matter, you know why? Because more and more people and families and kids and young people are joining us. And this is what counts. I can be the one hated. I can be the witch of the West or the East, you decide. But I don't care, as long as I know this is the right direction. There is no hope for Arabs in Israel unless the Israeli society opens up for them. And for it to open up for them, we Arabs have to open it up for ourselves first. And this is exactly what we need to do. It's easy to hate, easy to say it's us against them. It's easy to educate for segregation. Integration is a tough deal in Israel. Everybody suspects you have the wrong motives, but you know what? The reality dictates this is the only direction to go.
Very impressive. Finally, Rivka Rabitz, you got a wonderful introduction, but they really left out your most famous moment, which is when you became an international superstar through a photograph of President Joe Biden kneeling in front of you because he was so awed and appreciative of the fact that that you had the important position that you have, and also have raised 12 children. And also you and the Pope bowing to each other and him respecting your religious practice of no physical contact. So I'll just add that to your resume. But your journey is equally fascinating, I'm sure.
So that's probably the answer to your question about my barriers getting to my job. So I think the main barrier was the place where I was born. But that also was the window of my opportunities that brought me to the place I got to. So I was born here in Jerusalem in the most ultra-Orthodox neighborhood.
Keep the mic close to you.
Yeah? You don't hear me?
Yeah.
So I was born here in Jerusalem, in the most Haredi neighborhood after Mea Shearim. I was not born in Mea Shearim, but after Mea Shearim, there's a neighborhood called Mattersdorf, and that's very Haredi. And I was born to a family of 10 children. I was the second of 10. My parents came here from the States, but they were, I can't say anti-Zionists, but very Haredi. Like, my father didn't want to be Israeli until he was here for 15 years or something like that, because he thought the Israeli government took all the religious things out of being a Jew here in Israel. Like, he had a lot of... So that's the family where I grew up, and I got married when I was 18. And I was all ready to be a teacher. That was like my path. Girl learns in the seminary, learns to be a teacher, and then at the age of 18 and a half, 19, when you finish seminary, you go and you be a teacher. And then an opportunity came to my way, and someone brought me into the Knesset to be the intern parliamentarian assistant. At the age of 18 and a half, I was already pregnant with my first child. My mother at that time was pregnant with her 10th. The two of us had the same due date. She had the baby 2 weeks before me. I remember coming to work, to the Knesset, to my office in the Knesset, and saying, please bless me, I reserve a Mazal Tov today. So they said, what happened? You still have your stomach on you. What's this Mazal Tov? And I said, my mother had a baby. More than Biden going like that when he... And then I remember that was a very hectic day, and I really wanted to go and visit my mother. And she was staying in Karem, Hadassah in Karem, and those days, 95 or 96, you couldn't get into the hospitals after 6 o'clock in the evening. They were closing the doors. They had strict. And I remember trying to rush up and hurry my day, but getting to Ein Karem at 10 after 6. And the security guard said to me, no way. There was a long line of people waiting to go into the hospital. And he said, you all just U-turn and go out of here. No one will go into the hospital now. And I was there wanting very much to see my new sister. And I had my big bag of work, so I just went like this above all the line and said, we are the labor rooms here. Everyone moved, and he opened the doors, and I got to visit my mother. So that's where I was born. And that was a big, I can't say barrier, but a big challenge. I didn't learn in English at school, almost very, so I knew English, but if I was a different child that didn't know English, so I'm not sure I could take this job. We learned very few math, like it was a big challenge, but also a window of opportunity, because if I grew up in a very poor family, and I always saw my father checking our budget on a plain notebook with a plain pencil. So that prepared me for running all those big campaigns, and that was running a big budget. And I was at the age of 21 when I ran the first one, and I had a big budget to run it, but it was not enough. So like seeing my father doing that and fixing a chair that was fixed already 8 times instead of buying a new one because we didn't have them, like that prepared me. And a lot of the things I grew into so prepared me. And then came those challenges of my religious insight. So, as you said, meeting the Pope, or sometimes I could go to sleep hungry in the most elegant hotel in the world after having a state dinner with Putin or Angela Merkel, or a state dinner that had 9 portions that probably costed, I don't know, some hundred of euros, and I couldn't eat because it was not kosher. Things like that happened. So I had challenges on my way.
I'm going to ask some follow-up questions where time is short, and I want people to ask questions from the audience. So if I can, I'm going to ask you questions that don't have short answers, but I'm going to ask you to keep them short as well. Just, naturally following from what you said, Rivka, I think people are fascinated by Haredi society in Israel, and you are, you've broken a glass ceiling in that we've had a few Knesset members who are Haredi women in non-Haredi parties, but your prominence, as a Haredi public figure working for President Rivlin. I'm interested in the feedback within your society. Has it been pride and support? Has there been, backlash for, you taking such a public role? I think everyone here might be interested in listening to how your community has, reacted to your success and prominence.
So to your surprise and to my surprise too, usually I got supported also in my family. After the first shock my father got when I told him I'm going into the Knesset, and he was really shocked, they learned how to support me. They learned that I didn't leave my values, I didn't leave my religious values, I stayed religious, and as seeing that, so my family and also my community and my friends, I didn't feel, I always felt supported, respected,
Right.
and on the other hand, also working in very secular places, and also sometimes like sitting in a table with just men politicians and some. I also felt supported. I also felt people gave respect to my religious values. I think that was because I respected my values. I was not ashamed by them. I was not trying to cover them. I was bringing them up to the table. And
because there's a lot of debate in Israel about bringing Haredim into higher education and into the workplace, and the need to accommodate them with a lot of gender segregation issues. It's a huge debate in Israel, and you've had to succeed and overcome environments that did not necessarily easily accommodate you.
so there are a lot of challenges in that area, and I'm sure Ayelet has the numbers. It's complicated because Haredi women do work, and even in a bigger percentage of regular women in Israel. But, and that's the mistake, that's the illusion, they work in very low salaries.
Right.
So you see 80% of the Haredi women go out to work, and it's not easy. They have already 3 or 4 children at the age of 24 or 25, and they work long days, and they work in high-tech sometimes, and and there comes the big problem.
So Ayelet, I know you've just started your job, but let's take a peek at your to-do list. What are the areas in which you feel that it's most urgent that you address Israeli women advance, and kind of what are the ones that you think are kind of long-term goals to work towards? But are there things that you really feel that can be addressed and improved on a shorter-term basis that you feel like you can really turn around? They're calling this the government of change after 12 years of a government led by Prime Minister Netanyahu, who got a lot of feedback, for example, for not allocating the budget to fight sexual violence, etc. What do you see as things that you can start to address and change immediately?
Well, first of all, I am still learning, of course, and I'm sure, thank you for putting me together with these such inspiring women that I'm sure I have a lot to learn from. I have drawn 4 or 5 fronts that I am planning to, deal with. At large, the advancement of women, of course, like the name of the authority, and the barriers that I feel that they are the most, urgent is, first of all, of course, eradicating violence against women. The corona has set us back many years, and first of all, the violence against women, and also in the employment of women. Yesterday I saw the news that the emergency situation that we've been to, the state of emergency that we've been declared 2 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic will be canceled. And I thought to myself, canceled for whom, The situation, maybe we'll be able to take off the mask and not, be tested every day or two, but the pandemic is still here, the pandemic of violence, the pandemic of unemployment, of inequality. So I felt it almost made me upset to hear that, okay, we're declaring, are we supposed to celebrate this? No, we're here paying the prices. Women here are still paying the price. And so that's one front. The accessibility to rights in different areas, if it's social rights or legal rights. First of all, mapping them and then making them more accessible for women. The sexual equality, education for sexual equality is really what I feel is the base. I forgot to say that I'm a mother of 4. And I should have, yeah. and I'm almost embarrassed that I didn't open with this. So yeah, I said I'm at the beginning and I need to practice my speech, obviously. But, I'm very proud to be a mother of 4 brilliant children. And I want them to be, that's what me and my husband are trying, of course, to do. And every step we take as parents, every challenge we have as parents, either the stories we tell them or books or podcasts we listen to, and even the language of, respect and equality, it's something that we're starting to realize how important it is to, to combat challenges and take off barriers along the way, further along the way for our kids. And the minister of, my minister, Mirav Cohen, along with the Minister of Education, just recently declared, a joint program, a pilot for kindergarten, programs for the kindergarten of gender equality to earn this, it's a language you have to learn and acquire. And of course, the representation of women everywhere and around every table, in every panel. This is something that's very, it's very, you can see it everywhere. And I'm so happy to see the change happening. Like we heard before, the change is happening even here. And I want everybody to have these glasses, a special glasses of gender equality, to look at a panel and see, is there inequality at the directorion, or, in all different spheres. So that's, just a taste of what the vision I have for the authority. And next year, maybe I'll be able to tell you more about the, more achievements. Thank you.
Okay. One question to Dalia, and then we'll open it up to the audience. Dalia, Arab women in Israel face a double challenge of gender and being part of a minority. According to the Van Leer statistics, 30% of Arab women participate in the labor force, as opposed to 60% of Arab men and 60% of the general female population. And they also disproportionately suffer from gender violence. Of the approximately 20 plus, unfortunately, Israeli women who are reportedly killed by a partner or family member each year, over half of that number are Arab women. So from your perspective, what do you see as the most effective tools specifically for helping Arab women face this double challenge?
I have to say that I look at Arab women as the microcosm of what it is to be an Arab at all. And I think the story of Arab women is also the story of the community and the story of Israel. Because once Arab women start leading the change happens. I believe in the power of women to change. Arab men have no reason to change things. Sorry to say that, but sometimes the place given to Muslim Arab men is a place of patriarchy that is stable, and there is no reason for them to change the status quo of introducing women into partnership and into economy and into education as the producers of education, not only the consumers of education. And this is what's happening, is that women are more and more taking their place inside the community. And the oxymoron of the statistics is that Arab women are more highly educated than Arab men, yet they are less employed. And this goes back into few reasons. First of all, tradition is still there to convince women that it is good for them to be educated, but not be employed, not going out of the home. And second, the daycare and the preschool frames are not enough to be with the right equality to be an alternative to the mother at home or to the grandmother at home. This is why one of the things I have done when I started thinking of the Q schools and establishing a Q schools, that a Q school should be a home for mothers to feel free to pursue higher education and career. It can be there supporting them as well as along with supporting their kids. It should be with the right hours, with the right content, and it should be with the right values. And speaking of gender equality, when I started the Q schools, it was important for me that the first booklet about the family starts with mommy is here, and mommy is coming with a briefcase, with a suit, and mommy is a career woman, educated woman. And when fathers looked at the booklet and said, Dalia, you're causing troubles at homes. And I said, no, for the long run, you will have smart, intelligent girls that you will be very proud of, and they are our next generation. So it's important to say that COVID-19 has caused to the drop back of employment rates among Arab women. We were almost 30 and 40% employed, but we dropped back into less than 20. And now we're trying to go back. And I think that the two engines that will bring women up to front to take their role as partners and leaders are education and economy. Women, Arab women, need to be employed. They need money of their own. Once they have money of their own, because we also realized in past years that education and a PhD, I have to tell you one thing about myself. I had 3 degrees and others along, and I have never felt that I earned the respect and the trust of my community unless I started employing other women and paying salaries. Once I started doing that, for the community, suddenly I was Dr. Delia. Before that, I was Dr. Delia, who spends her time, as my late mother-in-law used to say, abandoning her kids with others. But when I started paying salaries to women and supporting families through the women, I started to be the Doctora Delia, which is like a huge social change. Once I got that, I said, I have a commitment to employ women. I have to say on the Atidna side, when we started Atidna, every NGO in Israel that works with Arabs says, integration of Arabs, integration of Arabs. And because we are at Atidna, we want effective, efficient integration, we said women, Arab women in high tech with 18,000, I wish dollars, 18,000 shekels bringing to her family, she is a game changer. And this is exactly how we are creating an engine of change where once you have the power to be you in your community, you can go and be part of the larger community, and then you're not the victim, you're the agent.
Great. Okay, good. We have a little bit of time left for questions. Who is...
Hi, thank you so much. I'm Dana Gershon. I'm the president of the National Council of Jewish Women. First of all, I want to just thank you all because this was so incredibly powerful. It was so amazing to hear your stories. And in terms of a question, all of you have overcome significant barriers, and every woman in this room has also overcome significant barriers just to be here, or none of us would be in this room. So I just want to ask what you think currently the greatest barriers are for women's advancement and continued advancement in Israeli society, and what society can do to address those barriers.
And let's do quick answers so we can get to as many questions as possible. Biggest barrier, quickly?
The stereotype about Arab women.
I would say, like I said before, education. I listen to Dalia, and I think that educated women have so much more doors open for them and opportunities, and they become role models for others. So that would be my first answer, and the second is, take off barriers in the world of employment. Dalia talked about daycare. I talk about transportation. Making the workplaces accessible, making it worthwhile going to work.
Yep.
At the end of the day, it's an economical.
Our transportation minister is a big feminist, so hopefully you'll have her in your corner, right?
Oh, she is. She
Yeah,
is. She's with me on this.
Merav Michaeli is the transportation
Yes.
minister.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I have many partners in this, and I wouldn't have never gotten into this if I didn't know I have great partners in the NGOs, in the government, and in the Knesset to go the way we have to together.
Okay.
And it's like I said, at the end of the day, it's what's on the balance.
The balance.
If it's worthwhile to go to work, she'll go to work. If the daycare is paid for, and the transportation, she'll be back home at on time. If she's paid properly, if she's treated properly, if she doesn't have to, although we didn't talk about sexual harassment at workplaces, which is another kind of pandemic. So I hope we'll be able to have an advancement in that.
Another question?
Hi, so I'm Debbie Isaac, president of the American Zionist Movement, and previously I was president of Amit, which has a network of schools here in Israel. So education is something that I've had a lot to do with. And I wanted to ask sort of a twofold question. First of all, we know that out of every first grade class, at least 25% of that class across Israel is Haredi, and 25% of that class is Arab. And so we see that this is going to change the population as we go forward. And it seems to me from listening to you and others that there's a lot in common between the Haredi community integrating into society and the Arab community integrating into society. And I wonder if there's been any connections made between those populations. And in terms of education, how you see improving those educational systems, both for women and in general, in terms of integrating into the general education system, if that would be a help in those communities, because I know that they're kind of siloed at this point. So it's a little bit of a twofold question.
I will say, and that I think answers also your question, that one of the biggest barriers is the stigma here in Israel. The stigma against us as Haredi, the stigma against Arabic population. And I think if we will choose people for workforce and for everything, without stigmatizing them and just looking at their values, at their kishurim, איך אומרים, abilities and skills and what they bring into the workforce, that will also break the barriers and also help communities and tribes. Israel is built up out of tribes, at least 4 tribes, and that will help minorities as Haredi or Arabic or other or women. Women's also is a kind of a minority. That would help us to bring them into workforce, not for them, for Israel, for our ability to grow up.
I have to add one other thing about the Arab system of education. Luckily, in recent 5 years, we have more and more headmasters of schools, not only teachers who are female teachers, but also the headmasters. The women are taking the headmaster position, the principal position, and they are really eager to change. They're eager to change because once they are there, they meet high expectations, and they need to prove themselves first, and they need to justify the fact that they took the one position in the village, for example, that should be, according to the community, allocated to the one man who is a candidate for it. So women face this challenge and they're dealing with it beautifully. Now, the problem with the Arab system of education that in recent 20 years, the average of graduates who have an average aligned with Israeli university criteria cannot go above 40%. That means 60% of Arab graduates of Arab high schools do not meet university criteria, and they are out there. They're usually the feeding the circle of, you certainly heard about it, growing crime and violence in the Arab community and the employment of men and women. And that thing has to change. The fact that the system of education in the Arab community is still segregated in so many ways. The fact that it does not have a vision of what it means to be a citizen of the state of Israel. It brings you inside rather than opening up the horizons of what it means to be part of higher education in Israel and workforce in Israel. That's the problem. There is sensitivity around the definition of, or the defining of the vision and the mission of the system of education in Israel, and the fact that it's possible to balance your identity with your citizenship. And that is reflected in the curriculum, that's reflected in the system of management, that reflected in the local politics of villages and Arab towns that dominates the school system from within, and so many things that are keeping us behind. And
I have to point out that in the places that have opened bilingual schools that are Jewish and Arab, they found demand both on the Jewish side and on the Arab side. There's definitely a place for those schools.
There's a growing demand from inside the community for something different, for bilingual schools, for Q schools, for example, that brings another liberal, open-minded education. And people know that the Arab system of education is in so many ways regressive rather than progressive. And that explains why the women, despite the fact that the 99% of the teachers are women and the headmaster can be a woman, the system is not really changing. There's something about the value system of it that has to be destroyed and rebuilt.
Okay. One more question and then we'll wrap up.
Good. Thank you so very much for the important work that you're doing in the area of violence against women, a large part of my career was dedicated to fighting against violence against women and children. I wanted a specific question to Mrs. Ravitz. The perception from the outside is that the Haredi community is very patriarchal and there aren't opportunities for women within that society, and maybe you can give us a little bit of an insight into that. And following up on that question, you've done tremendous things. Will there be more Rivka Ravitzes coming from the Haredi community?
Thanks. So it's a complicated answer, but I'll tell you I'm very proud of being Haredi. It's a big honor for me to be part of this community. So sometimes when you take a decision to be part of something big, so you also take on yourself the disadvantages of the community. And I know that, let's say my boys, they don't learn English at all. And I would love them to learn English, but since I want them to go to Cheder and Yeshiva, so that's the price I pay. And if I want, I'll send them privately to learn English, but not every mother has the money to send her boys to learn English privately. So there are big advantages also in the area of letting women to high careers. Usually, Haredi women could do almost everything. You could see them in high jobs, leading schools, leading teams at big high-tech companies. There's a barrier about getting to the Knesset. Most of the Haredi rabbis think that it's not proper for these days. But usually you could find Haredi women in all other high ranks of jobs. I don't think someone brings them down. But it's not an easy question. Like, we could have a conversation about it, I believe, for an hour or two.
Rivka, I think I can speak for much of the audience that we're looking forward to the Haredi parties allowing women in and seeing you run for Knesset. So as we wrap up, I'm reminded of Rivka's former boss's speech famous speech about the four tribes, the secular, national, religious, ultra-Orthodox Haredim, and the Arab communities, and his worry about how everyone's growing apart and so different. As a journalist who covers women's issues a lot in Israel, I'm struck by how women's concerns and women's needs cross the barriers of these tribes, and how in so many cases I've seen women break their tribal limitations in order to work together to achieve things. So I think it's a very inspiring aspect of what's going on here in Israel. Just to give a little plug, like Ayelet, I also have a new job. I'm hosting the Haaretz Weekend podcast, and I'm doing a lot to cover women's issues on that. I've had a women advocate on sexual violence. So those of you who are interested in the subject, as they say, please subscribe and listen to the podcast. As I said, it's been a pleasure and an honor to moderate this panel of extremely impressive women.
Thank you to all of our speakers. A truly powerful, inspirational, and insightful conversation. Our Torah readings these past few Shabbatot are about the building of the Mishkan, the movable tabernacle that the Bnei Yisrael used while wandering in the desert. We build it because God said to us, "Vasuli mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham." Build for me a sanctuary, so I shall dwell amongst you. Our conversation today has truly showed that your work is God work, that our conversation was Kedusha, was holy, was sacred, and may all our conversations have this holiness. And you all bring Kedusha into all of our lives. Toda rabah.
Just a quick important announcement before Minister Pnina Tanoano-Shata begins. If you are flying tonight, you must have an antigen test this morning. Okay, that's a requirement for entering the United States. So please be sure to take care of that in the testing room. before we leave for the foreign ministry. Shh. We are going to be departing at 9:50 sharp. So at the conclusion of this session, please start heading up to the buses and board. You also need your passports. I'm reminding you again from last night. Also, a special thank you to our colleague Stephanie Hausner for putting this panel together this morning.